Welcome to Entertainment Drive-Thru. Today's special is Jim Keller, musician.
Drummer test just now.
Quiet on the set.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to
Hello, welcome to Entertainment Drive-Thru. I'm Anna, with me is my co-host Dan, and today we have a very special guest. He's an awesome guitarist, and he also sings and he writes his own song. He just released a new album called Heaven Can Wait with an awesome new song that's called Cali Girl. He's most famous for writing the 80s pop sensation 8675309, Jenny. Let's welcome, joining us via Skype, here's the one, the only, Jim Keller!
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
How's it going?
It's going very well, sitting here in Brooklyn, New York.
Excellent.
Yeah.
But tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get started?
Well, I always played music. I mean, I grew up in the East Coast. You know, I started playing piano when I was 5 or 6 and then played cello. And then the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show on my 10th birthday in 1964. And that changed everything for millions of, kids, myself included. And
so you're about 29 years old now.
Yeah, 27.
27. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, the music has always been there. I moved to California when I was 20. And the first band I was ever in was a band called Tommy Two-Tone, which I started with a buddy of mine.
Nice.
And, we made a handful of records. We toured a bunch. We had that one big hit, 8675309, which I co-wrote with a buddy of mine named Alex Call up in Marin. And, we did the kind of classic pop roller coaster ride, the sudden rise and then the sudden fall and crash that goes on the other end of that. And, with all the accompanying chaos and fantastic stuff and then unfantastic stuff, so we did that thing, which was great. And then I've been playing ever since. I kind of stop and start, but then for the last 10 years, I've been full on it, making these last 3 records, which I've made, and, was playing as much as I can.
That's
awesome.
Wonderful.
And all right, now that song that you have, 8675309, where did that name come from?
It depends on what story you feel like telling. I mean, basically, I remember when that record came out and I did my first interview, there was a publicist from Columbia Records. And someone asked me that question. I said, we just made it up. That was my answer because that's true. And after the interview, the publicist came up to me and she said, don't ever do that again. And so what she was referring to was just telling the truth because it was so boring. And she scolded me. Being a young pop guy, she was older, and she scolded me. And she said, you just make something up because that's too boring. So, but the truth is...
That's lame, though. I mean, you should tell the truth. That you should tell everyone exactly how to... I mean, it's like some of our songs that we've written... Like, people ask me, we've got this song, Expiration Dating. So far, all of our friends love that song. And I've been asked, how did you write that song? And I'm like, I just wrote it. I don't know. But it's the truth. I can't make up a story, I
don't know. Your publicist is not going to be very happy with you then.
Well, that's true. Probably.
No, that's so funny. I love, though, because that number might actually be a number in Iceland right now because it's exactly 5675309.
Oh wow, yeah. Okay.
We don't have any more numbers, so we're up to that many numbers.
Well, it was when it came out. There was many people's numbers, with different area codes. So
and probably had got a lot of prank call like 8675309 Jenner.
Well, I'm sure if you dial it right now, you could maybe you could find somebody. Why don't you try it?
Yeah, right.
That would be awesome. You do that and then just say Jenny.
So it's not like an ex-girlfriend's number and you were trying to get her attention.
No.
Okay.
But it did get many girls' attention who purported to be my ex-girlfriend.
Gotcha.
I used to show up in towns, and there were these girls that would say, "I'm Jenny." It got a little crazy, actually.
Yeah.
Especially if my girlfriend at the time was with me, and these women were showing up.
Oh my God!
Right.
How was it to be a pop sensation in the 80s? I'm just curious.
Well, the first thing about it was that the clothes were really, really ugly. If you go back and look at, there's this video from American Bandstand. They posted all these videos, including the one with us, where they don't show the song. They just show Dick Clark talking to the bands, and the outfits are so horrendous, and they're just one worse than the next. It was kind of with headbands and scar. I don't know. It was really bad. At any rate, the outfits were pretty bad. But aside from that, I mean, having any kind of hit is extraordinary. It's really, really cool. Because, you're a young band and that's, kind of what you dream of have happening. And, when your song is on the radio, that to that extent, because it was a top 5 single. And when you get up into the top 5, it basically goes everywhere. And so all of a sudden you're like, parents are hearing it and their friends are, so it gets beyond, just the rock and roll world. And all of a sudden it's on the newsstands at the checkouts at the grocery stores and stuff. And it's really exciting, and it's the thing also about it is that it's really a shared experience because, you're a young pop band and you have a hit like that. And when you show up and play it, everyone in the audience has ownership of that as well. So there's this shared, everyone's like having the same, glee. And not just a band, everyone's kind of owns a piece of it in a way, which is, insanely fun.
I gotcha.
It's so nice when people sing along and dance to your songs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I wanted to ask you, when is that moment that you decided that being a musician is what you wanted to be? It wasn't going to be being a telephone operator. You wanted to be a musician.
Well, it was when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. Yeah, it was that simple. And there was a million of us, that were watching. And that just changed everything. I put the cello in the closet instantly.
I'm so curious. Do you think if it was today that they would get through? Because it's like, it was so groundbreaking at that moment, but because it wasn't, there was only so many shows that you were watching at that time. And like, that's, and the Ed Sullivan Show was like the main thing. I'm just wondering if the Beatles would be coming through today, do you think they'd get the attention they got back then?
Well, no, they couldn't because, you already said half of it, but no one had done that before. Nobody had taken American roots music and turned it on its head, on its ear, the way the Beatles did. They kind of brought it back to the States in a way. And, they were so charming. And again, there was so, in those days, it's like now when you listen to the radio, there's pop music all over the advertising. And in the 60s, pop music wasn't on television. Right. You didn't have commercials with pop music on it. It was old fashioned music. So when they came out, it was like a lightning bolt that came through the television, and now, that it's everywhere. Pop culture, rules. So it wouldn't be, even if it happened, it couldn't be the same.
Well, I think the other thing is that, a lot of people ask this all the time, like if Led Zeppelin were to have started today, if they would make it and all that stuff. And the truth is, I really doubt it. And I especially doubt it because, the styles are just so outdated now. And unless they did all their music in a modern style, if that's what you're getting at. But if they did the music the exact same way it is and they tried making it today, I was looking online last night. I was on YouTube and I was looking at Lorde did a cover of the Tears for Fears song, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. And it was used for the Hunger Games movie, Catching Fire. And it was very, very modernized. It was very cinematically modified. And I was looking at the comments just because I was bored. And I noticed that people were saying that it was so much better than the original, which I had no idea why they were saying that because you can't really compare a 1 minute clip to a full song that are completely different styles. But people were doing it, and people were even commenting that most people today like it a lot better than the original. And that I think that's the way it would have been if you took the Beatles today and compared them with how they were back then. If they were to have started today, it would be completely different. Most people wouldn't like them today.
You know what? I got so mad. I was once listening to Ryan Seacrest, and he was saying that, what was it, Justin Bieber or One Direction or something, and they were like, oh my God, the crowd hasn't gone this well since the Beatles. I was like, are you seriously comparing the Justin Bieber or One Direction to Beatles? It was ridiculous. But I want to know, how did you come up with the Kelly Girl?
Well, writing songs is You never really know where stuff comes from. I sit in a room. Actually, I sit in this room where I'm sitting right now with a guitar in my hands, and I play. And some chord progression sparks my fancy, and then I start singing. And I just try not to get in my own way. I try to let whatever's coming out, the first thought, come out. And that's one of those songs where I hit those chords, and then I started singing in that kind of melody line. And then once I get the beginning of that, then there's a story that I then, expand on. And that song, I mean, it's not like I ever held up a 7-Eleven, but there are pieces of that song that are experiences of mine that I've had, or close enough to that experience that, that's close enough for me. But so I use snippets of my own life with then my imagination. And, that I spent enough time in California where, riding the roads in the middle of the night for no good reason that you want to get into. Again, not after holding up a 7-Eleven, but, there was enough chaos going on that I could tap into some of that.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break to listen to a clip from Cali Girl by Jim Keller. But we'll be right back.
Take me away, my Cali girl. You're breaking my heart. Take me away, I'll never make it home without you. I'll never make it home without you.
And now, in terms of your music career, what are things that you have found? And this can be, well, let's ask first of all, for you, how has the music scene, how has the music industry changed? Not just in the sense of the industry as itself, but how has it changed for you?
Well, two things. There's two things that happen. One is there's me, and then one there's the music industry, because I've changed, and so has the music industry. But part of it, for me, is that I'm an older guy now. I'm not in my 20s. I'm not in my 30s. I'm not in my 40s. Mm-hmm. And so the priorities for me have shifted. When you're younger, and it's really it was all about for me and Tommy Tuna in that band. It was about having pop hits, and I don't mean pop as in poppy songs, but it's rock and roll and having hit records and touring and completely living that life. And I'm not doing that anymore. I've got a family, and I'm writing much more for myself and for the band of characters that I hang out with here in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And there are all these amazing players that I work with here in town, and some of in LA. And so, it's much more for myself at this point, and which is, frankly, there is no greater reward in the end than that. Of course, you want to have a hit record and have thousands of people screaming your song out. But in lieu of that, that's the change in a snapshot of my world. The music scene has changed so dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I don't even know where to start. If you just forget about the nature of the music, because I come from a really straightforward rock and roll background where I started out, it was all basically bar bands, and we were playing, rock and roll and blues or country inflected things. And, keeping people on the dance floor. And we didn't have a synthesizer, it was just really meat and potatoes. And that whole world is not really what's happening for years in the pop world. And so I don't even know how to relate to, the top of the charts kind of music scene.
Right.
But anyway, I can go on forever about this stuff.
What about this? Because you were probably under a big record label, and then have you been doing your own stuff since then, or how is it with record label wise?
Yeah, I put stuff on my own. I put stuff out on my own, and there is no record label.
Right.
Or I should say there is, but it's a self-contained. I have a handful of people that work with me, and we kind of do it together with a publicist and manager and stuff. But the record. The whole concept. The whole record industry has changed so much because they don't sell records anymore.
Right.
They don't sell CDs. So they used to rule the world. The record labels used to rule the world, and now they're all scrounging around trying to figure out how they're supposed to make a living anymore.
Right.
Yeah, and I tell people this all the time. It's kind of funny because I love the way that the world is now. You know, I mean, the industry is the way that, you know, everything is online. And it's at that point where, you know, I mean, everyone is able to do this stuff. Everyone's able to get their names out there. And I'm actually a little bummed out by the fact that everyone is able to do it, even though I think it's such a great thing. Because now there's, I mean, all these people that really should have the chance, they're getting pushed back and back because all these other people that shouldn't have the chance are getting pushed forward.
Yeah, I know I think you're totally right. There's this, you know, it's the good news and the bad news. The good news is that everybody can get their stuff out there, and that's the bad news too. Mm-hmm. You know, in the olden days, you know, you had to have like an audience or something really happening in order to get in the recording studio and make a record. Right. Somebody had to really think there was a reason for it, and now, you know, everybody I know has a CD out.
Well, and I think it's so ridiculous today about the sense that, you know, and I've told people, I've been hearing more and more that this isn't just for the music industry, but I mean, Twitter and Facebook followers apparently are what get you places.
I know it's a little sad.
I was saying, you know, at one point, you know, I mean, if you really think about it, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's really sad.
Yeah, it is.
Anna and I were talking to a woman one day, and she was saying that she heard that that bartenders are asked what their Twitter and Facebook followers are when they apply for the job, because the bar wants to know how many people they can draw to the bar. And it's like, really? What if you have, you know, 1 million followers and they're all 20?
I know. Oh my God. Then they want you. They want you as the bartender next year.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But now in terms of all the you were talking about how you do everything on your own now. You know, how is that experience as opposed to working with a label?
A real pain.
Right.
I don't know if I can swear on your program.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete pain in the ass. You know, it's like, and everybody has to do this. I mean, it's not me. There are plenty of, you know, people with, you know, more substantial careers that have to sell themselves. And, you know, that was unheard of in the old days. To be, you know, kind of pawning yourself out on the marketplace was really uncouth. But now everyone's saying, yeah, and you can buy my CDs on my website. You know, it's like, you know, people who are like really cool are, you know, selling, you know, going and selling their CD after their gigs and all the stuff that would have been unheard of, you know, 20 years ago.
I was amazed. There was a guy who was telling us a story of how Paul McCartney is a genius up to the point where he's literally pitching his own stuff. He was pitching his own stuff to a movie. Like, there was this guy who was like working in the music licensing business, and he met Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney pitched his stuff to him, and he was just his mind was just blown that not only he was meeting like a legend, but that he was still working it, and you know, like, it was amazing.
And the point that he made though was that's who we're up against.
Yeah.
Still. Like, we're up against the people that are legends.
Yeah. But most of the companies want the bands that no one's ever heard of, so they do have a leg up if you are starting out. But
exactly.
But what about because working with the record label, did you ever have bad experience with the label? Meaning, like, any types of deals or any of this stuff? You always hear these horror stories.
I still get, you know, statements where I purportedly owe them, you know, $500,000.
Seriously?
You know? Oh yeah, totally. It's like hysterical. I get them in the mail, you know, the royalty statements from the Tommy Two-Tone stuff. And I think we just cracked 500 like a year or so ago, where now I only owe $488,000 or something. You know?
Seriously?
Oh yeah, totally. And you know, we're this little band, you know, so it's like they just figure out ways to not pay you. But the thing about the record business is that, you know, it's like I always say, it's like in those days, and sure, to some degree it still is, it's like one small step away from the carny, you know. Mm-hmm. In the record business, they look you right in the eye and say, we're going to screw you. Yeah. With a smile on their face, and you go into it, and it's like, there it is. It's a record business, and they're going to screw you. Mm-hmm. And you either jump on that ship, you know, and or you don't. And I always find it a little. It's not that it's funny, but when I hear people complain about, oh, the record label did this and they blah blah blah, it's like, well, come on, man, it's the record business, it's the music business. What are you expecting?
I just love that every time, you know. I mean, one of the things that I've heard since I was a kid was that if I ever get a record label contract, always read it about 20 times before I sign it. That was just one thing I always heard when I was a kid. And I just always assumed, okay, so I'm going to have to get a lawyer. But I grew up in the 90s. I wanted to make sure that I had a record label and everything. That was what I wanted. I mean, it was what we grew up wanting, you know? And then I remember as I got older, it always hurt. I just always heard that, you know, labels would screw you over. And then it gets to that point where it's like, people are talking about how the biggest secret in the pop industry is the fact that Max Martin writes all the big hits. And I'm thinking, okay, then why is everyone so surprised when they get screwed over by a record label? I thought that wasn't a secret.
I find it so. Is it just me that I'm thinking of like Little Mermaid, where she's selling over her soul for like to get a voice? You know what I mean? Like when you're signing a record label, you're signing over your soul, but you get success.
No, you're signing over all your money that you'll have in the future.
Yes, but for success.
Yeah, there's another side of this though, and that is like, you know, it's like the Bill Withers song. You know, you keep on using me until you use me up. It's like, you know, hey, man, I signed up for that. It's like, go ahead. I want the roller coaster ride. Right. And, you know, there's a big sign on the door that says the music business. And, you know, you're young and, you know, I can say I got screwed over, but I didn't. I signed on. I had the ride. It was an incredible ride. And, you know, yeah, I went through a lot of shit at the other end of it. And that builds character in some ways. But, you know, that's part of the deal, is that's the ride that you go on. You know, it's not about, you know, kind of this flat surface where you kind of cruise along. No, you get those big ups and those big downs, and that is part of the deal in a way.
Exactly.
And can you tell us one crazy story from that day? I want to live it, man.
No, they're all rated R. I mean, sadly. I mean, they're all so bad.
So you're making a movie later, right?
I don't know. I can't. I've got a daughter. I can't even talk. I can't even do any of this stuff. It's like I always say. These are all stories that you can't tell your grandchildren. But you know, I mean, I can tell you the PG ones. You know, but.
Sure, hit us with at least one good PJ.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, one of the things, the first big gig we ever played, we were playing bars in Northern California. And, you know, we're based out of San Francisco, but we couldn't make any money there. So we go up north of the city and we play these roadhouses, literally. And where half the audience was drunk cowboys and the other half was drunk hippies, high on pot and cocaine. And it was this complete, you know, culture clash of these two things that we were playing for. And our first record came out, and Tom Petty heard it, and he sent his lighting designer up to this bar like 2 hours north of San Francisco to hear us, and we played in the bar, and he liked the band. And 3 weeks later, we opened for Petty in Red Rocks, which is about, I don't know, 10, 15,000 people. So that was literally like the first gig we ever had outside of playing bars, which was kind of extraordinary, and that was before 867 hit. That was on the first record.
Wow.
So that's a PG story. That's not as good.
No worries. It still has Patty in it. We're good. Right.
Okay. Well, then there was the time we opened for, it was the fake Deep Purple. I mean, this was so crazy. It was like
the fake Deep Purple?
Yeah, fake. They were fake. They were like, the manager had the name and they hired a bunch of guys. But and we showed up at a state fair. And it was in Hibbing, Montana, which is where Dylan was from. And I'll never forget because they had a chainsaw. It was like, it's like at a central casting. And I remember when we arrived at the gig, they were cutting watermelon with a chainsaw. And then that night I was in my motel room, and sure enough, I heard this boom, chainsaw start up, and the chainsaw came right through my wall into my room. Oh yeah, totally.
What?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's like all this stuff that you just think you kind of laugh because you go, my God, it's like they're really doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Now, they could afford to back in the day. Right. I don't think they could afford that now.
I wanted to ask you, though, you know, so far, what has been the biggest challenge for you?
When? Then or now?
Either way.
Either one.
Oh, God. Well, then, you know, the challenges were, you know, making hits, you know, having hit records. You know, that was what we tried to do. You know, we had a single on the first record that was top 40, and then 867 on the second, and then we did the classic self-destruction, kind of route after that. Now, for me, it's completely different. For me, it's now making music that I am proud of, that I like, and like I said, that my crowd of musician compadres here like. If I do something in a room with these guys that I play with, and they all come in afterwards and they all nod like, yeah, that's it, then I walk away happy, And then, I can record something, and if it resonates for people and someone likes it out there, then that's completely brilliant. But I'm off the, the pop ride.
Right. Exactly. Well, speaking of challenges, we actually have a new challenge for you today, because we are up to our segment, the question of the week. Question of the week.
Oh, God. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So in this segment, we'll ask our interviewees a new question every week, and they have to think of the funniest answer that they can come up with. To our listeners, write in your questions on our Facebook at facebook.com/entertainmentdrivethru and our Twitter at edrivethru, and we just might use it as the question of the week. Now, Jim, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So question is, what is one of the most embarrassing things you did when you were a kid?
Oh, man. Well, I can tell you one story. You want to hear this?
Yeah.
This is so crazy. It has nothing to do with music. Is that all right?
That's good.
Feel free.
This is terrible. When I was a kid, there were these things in my mother's drawer that were kind of these.
Maybe we shouldn't tell this. I'm
Okay.
No, go ahead.
No. We're better. We're better off not doing that one.
No, go for it.
Okay. At any rate, there are these cardboard tubes, and I won't say any more, that have cotton in them.
Okay.
Anna, you know what I'm talking about. We know what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Cardboard tubes, cotton, that were in my mother's drawer.
Yep.
So I had a sandbox, and I used to build sandcastles with men, plastic little army men in them. So I had this brilliant idea. I took one of those cardboard tubes, and then I went up in the attic, and I got a couple of shotgun shells that my father had lying around. And I emptied the contents of the shotgun shells into those little cardboard tubes that have the little string that comes out one end, and stuffed the padding back in, and then I stuffed it into this sandcastle and lit it. And
no.
The thing completely blew up and scorched my eyebrows, and I'm surprised I didn't get blinded, and burned my hair literally. And I remember screaming around, and I never told anybody what I had done. But, my mother was just yelling at me like, what happened? And I just was crying, and I never told her what it was.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
So that was an embarrassing moment.
Now, looking back on that situation, had you been a little bit farther back, would it have been awesome?
Oh, it would have been incredible. Are you kidding?
Well, I love asking that question, because every once in a while you ask someone about these situations and they go, "Oh no, it still would have sucked if you were farther back." But that would have been awesome then.
Oh yeah, are you kidding? Because it completely blew up the entire sandcastle. The soldiers went flying all over the place. It was very dramatic.
Man, I just love when guys are kids, we do the most violent things, but they're awesome.
The stupidest. They do the stupid boys. Little boys do the stupidest things in the world. It's unbelievable.
I mean, if you think about it, what he was doing right there was emulating soldiers getting blown to bits.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was awesome.
He wasn't thinking of that. He was thinking expulsion, fun.
Well, yeah, no. When guys are kids, all we want are to blow. We want to blow shit up. That's really what it is.
I know. Sadly, and then it doesn't change.
And I mean, when we're kids, though, we just think, okay, well, I'm going to blow shit up. But, if I'm far enough back, that's fine. But I'm invincible. It's not going to hurt me. And then you get older and you're like, man, why did I think that?
No, I know.
Oh,
well, we thought it because it was a fun idea. We always think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
See, and that's the thing I partially miss about being a child is that, you do things without being worried about the consequences. You just kind of do them. And I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a bad thing. But in a lot of ways, that's also a good thing because, it means you're more willing to take risks. You're more willing to
my God, completely.
Just try things. I think if we applied that more to life now, I think more people would be better off doing things. And I think more people would be better off because they'd try more. You know, at the same time, I feel like a lot more people would get injured.
I mean, if I had used my strength of reason, I never would have gone out and been in a rock and roll band. I mean, it's like, what a stupid career path that is, you know. But you know, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to the interview, but great story. We like that.
Okay.
What have you found has been some great advice that someone said? You know, maybe something that's just stuck with you.
Well, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got, and it wasn't actually advice that was given to me, but it was advice that I was cognizant of, and that is, you know, that you just get up every morning and you work really hard. I know it sounds so trite, but it's like, you know, to do anything that's really important to yourself, you have to really work at it. Right. You know, I've had things in my life, you know, musically and not, that have come easy to me, but there's no question that the things that you have to work really hard for are the things that are, in a way, more, you reap more reward from in the long run. I mean, it sounds really boring. It sounds like school or some shit, but it's actually true.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And is that the same advice you would give to someone maybe just getting started out? No,
my advice would be don't quit your day job. Actually, that's not true. My advice is, to musicians, it's always like, parents are always sending their kids to me, you know, because I'm like the musician they know. And what I always say to the parents and to the kids is, you know, have fun, you know, find something that you really love doing. Yeah. You know, it's not just about studying. It's not about being the best at this and the best at that, but you just figure out, where is the fun in this for me? Where's the joy? That's the word. Because, you know, being successful is going to come and go, and it's going to mean different things. But if you are doing something because you love it and you're finding the joy in it, then you always have that foundation of something that no one can take away from you. Right. And you own that.
Well, I think that's the same with any job really out there. I mean, anything that you go into, it doesn't have to be music. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? That's the way I always looked at it. Because, I mean, you could have a stable job as a doctor and completely be miserable the entire time, you know, but what if you wanted to be a psychologist, you know, and you could still find, I mean, it might be a little more difficult to find a stable job, but what if you found a stable job that actually paid more doing what you like doing?
Yeah.
I just always find that so amusing. Like I've actually talked to people where I asked them why they do what they do, and they said, well, because you have to make money. And I go, okay, so you don't like your job? No. Then why are you doing it? I mean, do you want to just be miserable for years because you feel like that's what you have to do because you're alive?
And I feel bad for those people. You know,
well, I mean, and it's like, I mean, it's that cliche that everyone says, you know, you've only got one life and it's so short. So why do something that you don't like?
Yeah. No, I feel very fortunate that I have something that I love doing so much. I mean, that's the gift. Not everybody is so fortunate to have something that they really are passionate about. And I'm lucky that I do.
Yeah.
We all are. All musicians are.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, what about resources? Are there any website that every musician should know?
Oh God, I don't really know the ones. I find them also frustrating. I mean, I used to use the what is it? All Music Guide. Is that what it's called? I think so, because you know, for finding like credits.
Okay.
And I like that one, but even that drives me nuts because it's not really that well done. I keep thinking I should just go raise, you know, a few $1 million and start my own website that.
I like how he puts that. I should just go raise a few $1 million. Why don't you? I mean, I wish that's just what we could do tomorrow. Like, let's just go raise $1 million.
Awesome.
Come on, let's start.
What are we going to do with these few $1 million?
Well, I know what I do. I mean, I would start a website that really showed, you know, artists and everyone who played on their records and who those people are and what they played. And all that information, you know, especially now because nobody uses physical CDs or records anymore. And so all that information is just kind of discarded.
That's very interesting. I actually like that idea because one of the things I love about IMDb Pro, like for the actors one, is that you can search for anyone, anyone who acted. And we don't have that for the musicians.
But that was a really good point what you were saying, with people not knowing the names and all of that. I've noticed that, it seems like it used to be, that for the longest time, Like if you talk to someone who liked a band, they would say every member of the band. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it was partly because everyone had the CDs and it said all the members of the band. Now, if you ask people the members of their favorite band, they don't even know the name of the singer.
Yeah, because I want to know who played bass. I want to know who took that guitar solo, And I mean, that stuff is because, I have such respect for all these, so many talented players out there in the universe. And I still buy CDs just because I want to know who's playing on it.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
And now we talked about some websites. Do you have any books that you recommend that, maybe on the industry side or just you find them really inspiring?
Oh, I don't read any industry books, but, what have I read recently that I loved? I mean, I read the first in the Beatles trilogy that just came out called Tune In.
Okay.
Nice.
And it's really brilliant. And it's about them starting out. I thought it would be really boring, and it wasn't at all. I mean, I think it just takes them up to their first, recording session or something. And that was really good. I love that. I'll read almost anything about, rock and roll bands. I just find it, even if they're trashy, I just find it, they're really entertaining.
They're a good read. That's what I noticed with they say the same thing. Most artists are like, we love the biographies because it's fun. It's like living through another person through a,
Well, and you also, I mean, I like the idea of learning from other people's mistakes because, if they already made the mistakes, it's not necessarily that I don't want to make all of those mistakes because honestly, some mistakes are good.
Frankly, I want to know which mistakes to make. I don't want to miss any.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
That's where all the fun is.
Right.
Well, I was gonna say, it's not necessarily a bad thing to make mistakes. That's what I think. That's something that everyone is confused about is the fact that if you make a mistake, it's not necessarily a bad thing. That just teaches you a better way of doing it.
Yeah, a better way to make that mistake.
Well, yeah. Well, unfortunately, we are getting down to the end of our interview, but where are places that our listeners can find out more information about you?
They can go to the proverbial website, jimkellermusic.com, and find whatever they can torture themselves with.
I love that.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for being on the show. It's really been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank
you.
Thank you,
Anna, and thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And for more information on Jim Keller and the podcast, go to entertainmentdrivethru.com and subscribe on iTunes. Like and follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/entertainmentdrivethru and our Twitter and Instagram @drivethru.
This is Jim Keller, and you've been listening to Entertainment Drive-Thru.